Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guys segment show. Also, today in this segment, I'm at the Sioux Historical Railroad Association, Sioux City, Iowa.
The Siouxland Historical Railroad Association is located on 3400 Sioux River Road in Sioux City, Iowa. The site is located near the Iowa-South Dakota border, located next to the Big Sioux River. The museum is what used to be the site of the maintenance facility for the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad in the city. The Sioux City and Pacific Railroad was a railroad in the states of Iowa and Nebraska. It was the first railroad to arrive in Sioux City. In 1868, the first train arrived in Sioux City, built as a connection from Sioux City, Iowa to the Union Pacific Railroad in Fremont, Nebraska. It became part of the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad in the 1880s. By 1890, Sioux City became a major railroad hub, and Sioux City became the 10th largest railroad town in the country. The Roundhouse is where steam engines would be housed. The site closed in 1980 and became a salvage yard, and all the historic buildings were nearly in jeopardy of being demolished. Thankfully, Larry Obermeyer and his son Larry Obermeyer Jr. rescued the site and restored a lot of historic railroad buildings on the property. The site soon became what is known as the Sioux City Railroad Museum. By the time the association acquired it, the site was badly overgrown with junk, and the remaining buildings were in bad shape, having been extensively vandalized. In 1995, the organization purchased the 31.5-acre site of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul railroad shops on the west edge of Sioux City. A lot of the historic buildings were falling into disrepair, and only 7 of the original structures remain. Once the site was purchased, work began to restore the old buildings, including the Roundhouse, to become what is now a museum. The museum added several different locomotives and train cars over the years to the collection, and even railroad artifacts. The museum even gives train rides, including on the standard gauge tracks. They mainly use the speeder and some flatbeds to go from the Turntable till the line ends at where it meets up with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad tracks. In 2016, the miniature railroad was constructed and the tracks were laid. Once the first train ride was given on the 15-inch gauge tracks, the train could only operate back and forth until the year 2018. As you can tell by these footages, the miniature train started going in a complete circle around the museum grounds. Today, the museum continues to preserve a lot of railroad history from other railroads besides the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad, and a lot of railroad artifacts as well, as it still does today.
Behind me is the engineer's tool shed. This tool shed is the first building by the entrance of the museum. This building housed the oil cans, wrenches, rags, shovels, and other items that were used by the train crews on their run. This shed is strategically located next to the locomotive ready track. If the crews would get dispatched, they would walk over here from the Roundhouse. After getting their orders, they get their tools and equipment and hop on the locomotive and go. The turntable was made by American Bridge Company in 1917. The turntable is 90 feet long, and its purpose was to put locomotives in the desired stalls for the maintenance and position them in the proper direction on the ready track for picking up their assigned trains after maintenance and servicing. Construction of the turntable is primarily wood with a metal under frame. Operations of the turntable was electric or manual. The tall mast is in the center of the turntable, which provides a key link in the electrical operation of this item. In the top center of the bridge is an item called an electrical slip joint and is installed in the red box. You can see it. It has a cable and electrical wires running it to keep the cables the top of the slip joint in a stationary position. Inside there are electrical brushes that pass the electricity to the cylinder drum into another set of wires and down to the motor and control stand to operate the turntable. Without that device, operation would not be very difficult. With anything mechanical, things break. How do you move the locomotive if it blew a fuse or lost electrical power? You push it. On each end of the turntable, you'll even notice a large upside-down U-shaped metal enclosure. They were anchor points to put in a 10 to 14 foot long piece of 6x6 lumber that would be used to push holes in to help spin the turntable manually. An interesting thing, the turntable is one of the balance designs. It will flop down and on one side or the other to allow the tracks ahead to even ease up and loading equipment on or off. The equipment move across the center of the turntable, the turntable bounces itself and the track ahead rises a couple inches. The turntable is balanced. It is surprisingly easy to turn a heavy locomotive, and also this turntable still works like it did when it was used to turn the steam locomotive. The train locomotive you see behind me is Great Northern 1355.
Great Northern 1355 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1909 and is the 33908th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a 462 Pacific type steam locomotive and is an H5 class steam locomotive. Originally, this locomotive was built as a 460 10-wheeler type steam locomotive and was originally classified as an E14 class steam locomotive and was one of 25 of them built. As well as that, it was originally numbered 1020. It was also built as an oil-burning steam locomotive, and it then went to work in Hilliard, Washington. Then, in 1919, it was moved to the Spokane, Washington division and hauled passengers until 1924. It then went into the Dale Street shops where it was rebuilt as a coal burner. As well as that, it was rebuilt as a 462 Pacific type steam locomotive where it had a trailing truck added, and it was reclassified as an H5S class steam locomotive. As well as that, it was renumbered 1494. In 1926, the locomotive was renumbered 1355 and was converted to being an oil burner once again. It also appears it was reclassified as an H5. It was sent to the Butte, Montana Division, where it was assigned to haul the Oriental Limited for 5 years and remained in passenger service till 1950. It also hauled this list of passenger trains over the years: the Oriental Limited, the Empire Builder, the Winnipeg Limited, the Cascadian, the Gopher, and the number 223 local from Williston, North Dakota to Havre, Montana, as well as on the Snowden to Bainville, Montana route. In 1953, it was sent to the Mesabi Iron Ore Range to work and was retired in 1955. The railroad then donated it to the city of Sioux City, Iowa, and it was put on display next to the Civic Center for several years. It even suffered vandalism only on the headlight. In 1984, it was donated to the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa. It was moved to the former Chicago Milwaukee and St. Paul Railroad shops in Sioux City, Iowa, and was carefully cosmetically restored starting in 1992. The locomotive soon got refurbished inside and out by volunteers and started looking good as new. Also, Great Northern 1355 is the only surviving Great Northern 462 left in the world today and is preserved here at the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa. And it is brought out onto the turntable sometimes for events, and also it is on display inside the Roundhouse mostly, and you can also visit the cab and sit where the engineer and fireman used to sit and even ring the locomotive's bell. And that's how it's done.
Northern Pacific 1318. Northern Pacific 1318 was built by Northern Pacific Railway, possibly at the South Tomoka shop in Tomoka, Washington, in 1913, and is a wood cupola style 24-foot caboose. This caboose was originally numbered 1877 when it first came out of this shop. You can also get a real feel for what early train travel must have been like, and as many internal parts are missing. Inside the caboose, you can find the toilet, ice box, and storage cupboard, the area where the conductor's desk, pot belly, stove, and crew beds were can clearly be seen. Also, this caboose was a different color and different look before, so the way you saw how it looks currently, but it was painted this color when it rolled out the factory in 1913. Then in 2013, this caboose turned 100 and got repainted into its original color and look, and it's still part of the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association. see right behind me is Chicago Milwaukee and St. Paul 206. Chicago Milwaukee and St. Paul 206 was built by General Electric in 1943 and is a 45-ton center cab switcher diesel locomotive. 206 has two 150 horsepower Cummins diesel engines, one air compressor on each engine with the train air brake system. 206 was Marine Corps 206 formerly and stationed at Marine Corps Logic Base in Barstow, California. The locomotive was donated to the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in 1990. This engine was primarily used as a switcher, so the engineer and fireman seats in the cab are located on few-foot high platforms to afford better viewing during switching operations. Also, when 206 came to the museum, it was painted light yellow and numbered 1 as SHRA, Siouxland Historical Railroad Association, then was repainted to a Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul theme. This loco was equipped with side rods and counterweights to connect the two axles in each truck, as each truck only has one traction motor. This helps increase the traction of the wheels by distributing it among both axles, not just the one powered axle. Later models incorporated chains inside the truck that serve the same purpose. This locomotive has a high weight to power ratio and has excellent traction. It also rated to be able to pull 20 loaded freight cars and on track level, and can pull Great Northern 1355 onto the turntable and push Great 1355 into the shed. Because it was designed as a switcher, it is not a fast engine. Nearly all variants of this style were limited to 20 miles per hour speed limit due to the double reduction gearing of the traction motors. What you see behind me is Chicago Northwestern 162-571. Chicago Northwestern 162-571 was built in 1973 and manufactured by Pullman Standard Company of Bessemer, Pennsylvania, and was part of lot number 9665 and is a hydrone frame, 40 psi, 50-foot boxcar. And this boxcar has been used on freight trains hauling boxes and other materials that is freight to freight. Also came to be part of the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association. Also, you can check out the interior of the boxcar. You can see what's inside the boxcar, like a shelf, hoses, some hay bales, a small caboose inside, and this old train schedule board, whatever you see inside. See right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1313.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1313 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad Shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1947 and is a baggage dorm car. The 4 dorms were used by overnight passenger train crews when the car was used on the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad as well. This car also contains a baggage section and a mail sorting section at one end, and the other has the 4 crew sleeping compartments as well as a hygiene area. The car spent several years traveling on long-distance passenger trains on the railroad. This car spent several years on passenger trains many years ago. It even saw service on the railroad's Olympian Hiawatha passenger train. In 1956, the car was repainted yellow when it was used jointly by the Chicago Milwaukee and St. Paul, Union Pacific, and Southern Pacific between Chicago, Milwaukee, and the West Coast, and it took over joint operations of the Union Pacific cities' passenger trains into Chicago. It even traveled on Union Pacific's named trains such as the City of Los Angeles, the City of San Francisco. Then the car was retired from service and was then sold to J.W. Kerslake in South Dakota. Eventually, it got repainted back into its Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul paint scheme. Later, it was bought by Paul Tagstorm in 1996. It was then moved to the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, and soon joined the collection. Today, it is preserved here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is seen on display today. Okay, I'm going to show you all the exhibits inside the Roundhouse, and here's part 2 of it. So I'll get behind the camera, and here we go. Okay, so here we go inside the Roundhouse. And let's look at this back here. You can see that picture on the wall. End of a century. If you want to pause and read what all that says, I'll be glad to move over here if you care to look there. This is the most of these pictures are of the museum today. And look at this case right here. All these old railroad artifacts. Sorry, let me try this again. Wow, pretty cool. And look at this picture right here as I go back. If you want to pause and look at all that, you can. This is like the Iowa. Wow. Oh yeah, that's down in the corner is the first steam engine to enter the state of Minnesota. It was owned by the Great Northern Railroad, but it's at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in Duluth. Look at these HO scale models. You can see that these are builders' plates, Paducah shops, General Motors, EMD, General Electric, and an SD9 as well. That came off a CB&Q SD9, it looks like. But these are coded to tell you that they were built by these companies. And yeah, but that looks like an SD9 right there. Let's look at more. But I'm going to show you the main area of the Roundhouse. If you look at this, you might remember this from part 1 of this video where I showed the exhibits. Here's how 1355 came to the museum and its timeline. And if you press this button right here, it will make these wheels go. These are wheels off of a live steam engine, and a bit smaller than the tracks that run outside. They also got that working just recently, the time I made this video. Let's look at more so you're not bored looking at that. And look at these cases right here. The NSF vest and hard hat has a Union Pacific headlight. And here's a jean jacket that looks like engineer overalls. locomotive crew overalls and a hat as well. And look at this case down here. Those are all, a lot of these show the Milwaukee Road logo because this area was the Milwaukee Road shops in Roundhouse, which we're in the Roundhouse right now. Rock Island, Santa Fe, Burlington Northern, Northern Pacific, CB&Q, Great Northern, Spokane, Portland, and Seattle, Union. Oh yeah, these are what tell you the railroad's family tree. Like there's Canadian National, Union Pacific, 6936, which is at the RHMA Railroad Heritage Midwest America in Silvis, Illinois at their base, Burlington Northern, Santa Fe. Yeah, let's look at more. And here's a crossing light right here, as well as a track switch signal. Those are like modern days. And let's look in here. This used to be where you could pay to enter the museum, but now it's in that building, that brick building right there. This is the map of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad. Here's a board if you want to pause and read that if you can see closely. Here's a switch stand and an old-fashioned telephone. And let's go back in the Roundhouse. And let's look at that case. Oh, let's look at this case first. Look at these. Railway Express Agency, Santa Fe Chief, Wells Fargo Express, Amtrak. And that xylophone thing right there is when dinner was ready. That's an Amtrak police badge, as well as a conductor's hat, and a lot of patches that would be on sleeves. And here's some old railroad keys right here, and some gauges from steam locomotives. I wonder what these are. Here's a baggage cart with barrels and old suitcases right here. And this looks like a diorama of a roundhouse. It almost looks like the roundhouse we're in. That looks like the Great Northern steam engine in here. That's on display here. And that's a Milwaukee Road steam engine. This is HO scale. Look at these nails. Tell you the dates. Or tag device is used by railroads to track the life of railroad ties. They come in different lengths of type of material and shapes. Most date nails are steel, though many are copper, aluminum, Malabel iron, or brass. And here's some tools in this case right here, including the paintbrush. And here's a steam locomotive's headlight, and here's what it says. You can see that clearly. This light comes from a steam locomotive operated by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, the Milwaukee Road for short. If you want to read the rest, feel free to pause. You can see that clearly. Yeah, modern light. And that looks like a bell, and there's a whistle as well. And that's all to see. What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 121. Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 121 was built by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad shops in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1948 and is a diner car. For several years, this car was where people would sit at tables while they would eat their breakfast, lunch, or dinners on board. It features 48 seats and a kitchen inside. It saw service on passenger trains many years ago. It saw service on the Olympia and Hiawatha passenger train on the railroad many years ago. In 1956, the car was repainted yellow when it was used jointly by the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, Union Pacific, and Southern Pacific between Chicago, Milwaukee, and the West Coast, and it took over joint operation of the Union Pacific City's passenger trains into Chicago. It even traveled on Union Pacific's named trains, such as the City of Los Angeles and the City of San Francisco. Then the car was retired from service and was then sold to J.W. Kerslake in South Dakota. Eventually, it got repainted back into its Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul paint scheme. Later, it was bought by Paul Tagstorm in 1996. It was then moved to the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, and soon joined the collection. Today, it is preserved here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is seen on display today, and also you can even visit the interior of the car as well.
What you see right behind me is the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Boxcar.
The Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Boxcar was built in 1929 and is a boxcar. This car's original number is unknown. For many years, this car spent several years hauling cargo that a boxcar like this one hauled on board when it was used in freight service, such as boxes or rolls of paper or any other products it may have hauled many years ago. It was later retired and it then belonged to a gentleman named Keith Olson in Atlantic, Iowa. In 2021, he then donated the car to the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, and it was then moved to the museum by Meyer Towing. Today, it is on display here at the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it can be seen on display today.
What you see right behind me is the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Sioux City Roundhouse.
The Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Sioux City Roundhouse was built in 1917 and has been in this spot for several years. The building originally had 30 stalls. The facility served as a divisional terminal for servicing steam and diesel locomotives and repairing rail cars. The building also housed locomotives inside as well. Then in 1981, the railroad closed the property. Then the site was sold by the railroad to a farm machinery salvage operator and was soon a junkyard, and the roundhouse was included, as well as other parts of the complex. Then it was about to be demolished along with the other historic buildings, but thankfully there was light at the end of the tunnel. And in 1991, the City of Sioux City and the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association entered into a development agreement to preserve this site. The city's urban renewal was planned for the Riverside neighborhood, identified and recommended a potential redevelopment of the Milwaukee Railroad Shops Historic District as a historical attraction. The Roundhouse was soon going under renovations, and the Roundhouse was carefully restored inside and out. Today, there are only 6 stalls that remain. One end is the gift shop, and most areas of the building are where a lot of train cars and locomotives are seen in public view inside as well. And at the other end of the Roundhouse has the Holocaust exhibit as well.
What you see right behind me is Denver and Rio Grande 22446.
Denver and Rio Grande 22446 was built by the Denver and Rio Grande shops in Denver, Colorado, 1951, and is a bulkhead flat car. This car once hauled cargo such as plywood pipes, as long as they were tied together, logs, wood, and steel beams, and many others that this car carried a long time ago. Then later it was retired and was then acquired by the Pikes Peak Historical Street Railway in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In 2022, it was then bought by the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it can be seen today.
Okay, right here is one of the 2 cars that are based off the 2 cars that are in the Hiawatha paint scheme on the tracks that go around here at the museum grounds here in Sioux City, Iowa. Let's show you the other one. Okay, here's the other car that is part of the train set that goes around the museum grounds here in Sioux City, Iowa. And yeah, it looks just like it in the same blueprint, except this gap right here is big enough for like wheelchairs. And yeah, what you see right behind me is Chicago Northwestern 11009.
Chicago and Northwestern 11009 was built by the Thrall Car Manufacturing Company in Chicago Heights, Illinois in 1960 and is a bay window caboose. This caboose was used on the back of freight trains on the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad and was also used as the train crew's office as well. Later, it was retired and was then acquired by the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is on display today. The paint was soon starting to fade whenever it sat outdoors. Then about 2016, it was moved inside the Roundhouse and was then being repainted and was soon looking good as new. Then it soon went back on display. Today, it can be found here on display at the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is seen today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago Northwestern 16970.
Chicago and Northwestern 16970 was built by Pullman Standard in 1969 and is a 50-foot boxcar. For many years, this car was used to haul cargo that a boxcar like this one hauled on board when it was used in freight service, such as boxes or rolls of paper or any products it may have hauled many years ago. Later, it was retired and it was then acquired by the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is preserved today.
What you see right behind me is Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul, 1984.
Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul 1984 was built in 1968 and is a bay window caboose. This car was never built for the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad. Originally, the car was built for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad and was originally numbered 11168. This caboose was used on the back of freight trains on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad and was also used as the train crew's office as well. Later, it was retired and was then acquired by the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, and was repainted orange and renumbered 1984, as if it resembles a Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul caboose, and has a reporting mark SLHX as well. The real caboose that was numbered 1984 is at the Illinois Railway Museum in Union, Illinois. Today, this caboose is seen here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is preserved today, and sometimes it is seen rolling on the grounds as well.
What you see right behind me is the Flatcar.
This flat car was built somewhere around the 1900s and is a flat car. Both the railroad this flat car was used for and number it had is unknown, and this flat car was used for hauling things like construction machines on wheels, pipes, steel, and all other types of cargo it once hauled many years ago, and it may be possible it was once used by the Chicago Northwestern Railroad years ago. Then later on, this flat car was retired and was somewhere else. In 2021, it was acquired by the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, and when it arrived, it had the Holocaust car on top, and it was transported to the museum with the Holocaust car riding on top. When it was on the semi-trailer, the Holocaust car was taken off this car and the flat car was then moved outside. Today, it is here at the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is preserved today.
Okay, you can see right here is a trolley that is here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum, but this trolley was just built on a maintenance of way boggy, as it's underneath the trolley body, and the chassis is the maintenance of way flatbed. And I think this trolley was just built for fun, or might look like it's something to do with the parade float. There are pictures inside, and I'll show you all the pictures of it. This is based off the Toontown trolley. So here we go inside. So if you want to pause and look at the pictures, you can, and read what everything says. Yeah. And even cartoon trolleys. Toonerville Trolley. Oh yeah, I thought this would be Toontown Trolley it's based off, but it appears to be based off a cartoon trolley like this one you see here. What you see right behind me is Florida and Alabama 18.
Florida and Alabama 18 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1920 and is the 528 50th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a 262 Prairie type steam locomotive. This locomotive was originally built for the W.B. Harbison Lumber Company in Defuniak Springs, Florida, and has always carried this number. It hauled logs for many years. Then it was later sold to the Baghdad Land and Lumber Company, but was assigned to the Florida and Alabama Railroad in Baghdad, Florida, but kept the number. Then in 1940 it was sold to the Mobile River Sawmill Company in Mount Vernon, Alabama, and again kept the number. Later it was retired from service. In 1962 it was sold to Fred Stack in Reese, Michigan, where it saw service on the Reese Central Railroad till the lease ended in 1965. Then, in 1969, it was sold to the Dry Gulch Junction, Inc. on the Dry Gulch and Tombstone Railroad in Wytheville, Virginia. In 1977, it was sold to King Wilson's Montana Central Railroad in White Sulphur Springs, Montana, where it operated on the Tourist Railroad. In 1985, it was sold to the Pellet family and was parked next to a propane facility in Atlantic, Iowa. At some point, the glass of the headlight was vandalized. Then, in 2001, it was moved to the Fremont and Elkhorn Valley Railroad in Nebraska and was in the shed in Hooper, Nebraska, which was the other end of the railroad. It sat in that shed for years awaiting cosmetic restoration, but that never happened. In 2021, it was then added to the collection of the Siouxland Historical Railroad Association in Sioux City, Iowa. At this point, it is currently awaiting cosmetic restoration as well. Today, it is the only remaining steam locomotive from the Florida and Alabama Railroad. As well as that, it is one of two surviving W.B. Harbison Lumber Company steam locomotives remaining today, and 19 which is lettered and numbered as Roscoe, Snyder, and Pacific 5 is the other one and is at the Scurry County Coliseum in Snyder, Texas, and 18 can be seen here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is today.
What you see right behind me is LG Everest Inc. 61.
LG Everest Inc. 61 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1938 and is the 731st diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an SW8M type diesel locomotive. Originally, this locomotive was built as an SW8. For many years, this locomotive was used to switch cars around. It was built originally for the Kansas City Terminal Railroad in Kansas City, Missouri, and this is the original number it had. In 1952, it was rebuilt as an SW8M and was then sold to LG Everest Inc. in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and was renumbered 13346. Later, it was renumbered 61. Then, in 2022, it was acquired by the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, and was moved to this location by truck and was transported by Meyer Towing and Berghorst and Son from Hull, Iowa. It was unloaded at the museum and set back down on its trucks. It was then worked on to get running again. Today, it is preserved here at the Sioux City Railroad Museum in Sioux City, Iowa, where it is preserved today and as well.
Okay, I'm going to show you all the model railroad displays inside this building, and I'll get behind the camera and walk around inside.
So here we go. Okay, here we are as we enter the model railroad building. You can see right here is a case with some HO scale trains, as well as this, models of trolleys, and I wonder what scale those could be. Let's show you the cases first, and then let's look at the model railroad display. Look at all these that you're seeing right here. Wow. Here's this bridge, and look at how well detailed this. Oh, and someone just turned it on. CSX, Canadian National. That looks like a Dakota and Iowa diesel. Or is it Iowa and Dakota, if I remember correctly. And look at that turntable. And there's a doodle bug. And wow, look at how well detailed this is. It's probably about based off a portion of the Milwaukee Railroad. It says Nebraska Central up there. Wow, just fine and well detailed, not gonna lie. That looks like a Union Station right there. I wonder what Union Station this is. Oh, it looks kind of like Omaha to me. Or is it? I don't think it could be. Please leave your comments below and let me know. And look at this wall. See these pictures right here. Here's more of the model railroad. Let's look at this case. That looks like where you could wood mechanism steam engine. And look at all these. Wow. This newspaper, this newsprint, whatever it is. And here's more in this back room. And let's go back here. Look at all these on the wall. So you can see, look at all these pictures of all these surviving steam engines. Pretty cool, huh? Look at these Line L trains on the wall. When you're in here, you could smell the Line L trains because, yeah, you could smell, it smells like Line L trains. Let's look around this building. Look at all these model railroad displays right here. This Line L, O scale. Wow, isn't all this well detailed or what? I'm not gonna lie, looks pretty cool. You can see all these. Oh, and there's some Bachmann G scale up there, and that some of those are different brands aside from Bachmann. Well, I hope you all enjoyed learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Also, I hope to see you all again in the next segment. And if you didn't subscribe to my channel just yet, the subscribe button is down below the video screen. And if you didn't give my Facebook page a like yet, here's where you can find it. And if you didn't follow the Instagram page yet, here's where you can find it as well. Be sure to do all three of those. Also, merch is available on teesprings.com. Be sure to buy your merch at Teesprings. It's in the description box below, along with the link to Facebook and Instagram pages. And remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy segment show. Sign out till next time. All aboard.